The FIFA Club World Cup quarterfinals are officially set. Juventus, Inter Milan, and Manchester City are out of the tournament after being dumped in the round of 16. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Into the Net FC. My name is AlexAlKazzaz, and I'm also known as the Bear of Texas. And seeing what happened in the round of 16, you see these three European heavyweights be eliminated, and you see Lionel Messi and Inter Miami be absolutely squashed by Paris Saint-Germain, which, to be honest, was very, very expected. It's quite unfortunate that the MLS was unable to make a strong impact in the FIFA Club World Cup, and while that's unfortunate, it's absolutely not surprising. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. The MLS cannot compete with the Europeans. The MLS can't even compete with the South American clubs, can they? The MLS truly was humiliated in the FIFA Club World Cup, but again, it's not unexpected. It was totally expected. It's not surprising. The MLS is certainly thriving in a sense, but as far as I'm concerned, against the South Americans and against the Europeans, the MLS, they're no match for the Europeans, nor are they a match for the South Americans. Unfortunate, but not surprising. But at least one MLS team made it to the knockout stage. But again, absolutely destroyed by Paris Saint-Germain. It was 4-0 at the end of the first half, and much to my surprise, PSG did not inflict more damage in the second half. PSG had 9 shots on target, made only 4 of them count. So in Inter Miami's case, there's something right there to talk about, how the Miami goalie made several saves. And Lionel Messi and Luis Suarez were deployed as the dynamic duo in the attack for Inter Miami, and Lionel Messi was MIA for this game. Messi and Luis Suarez posed absolutely no threat. Absolutely no threat whatsoever. PSG countered with Bradley Barcola, Desiré Doué, and Kvaratskhelia in the front three for their attack. And interestingly enough, none of those three scored a goal. As a matter of fact, Ousmane Dembele was on the bench and he came in and he didn't score a goal, but that's okay. It was great to see Ousmane Dembele play. I was very happy to see that. And as a matter of fact, PSG scored 3 goals of their own. One of the goals was an own goal by Inter Miami. João Neves opened the scoring for PSG, and he scored a brace, and Achraf Hakimi scored a goal of his own. PSG had 0 problems. 0 problems whatsoever. However, if there's a bit of a flaw from Paris Saint-Germain from this game, was that there were several missed scoring opportunities, which is no surprise because PSG is kind of known for that. You know, that was one of the negatives that I covered about PSG this season, is that even though PSG was winning games, they had a habit of squandering scoring opportunities. Now, in the Champions League final, that was not the case, but the bottom line is PSG still gets the dominant win over Messi and Inter Miami. And as I said, it was a horrible, horrible campaign for MLS teams. Inter Miami didn't win their group, although they almost did. Inter Miami squandering that 2-0 lead. And if Inter Miami had won that game, they certainly would have won Group A, but that didn't happen. So Inter Miami was with 1 win and 2 draws. The Seattle Sounders lost all 3 of their games. LAFC drew 1 game and lost 2 of them. So for MLS teams in the FIFA Club World Cup, only 1 win came about. Just 1. And again, it's embarrassing and it's horrible for the MLS, but again, it's no surprise. No surprise whatsoever. And rather very unfortunate. But again, once again, no surprise. So, we got PSG and Inter Miami from that one. Well, Gianluigi Donnarumma made a couple of saves for Paris Saint-Germain. And Donnarumma continues to be so dominant, and Donnarumma made 3 saves. So, even though there's 9 shots on target and PSG scored 4 times, so I think earlier I said that they made 4 of them count. Well, I had to remind myself and correct myself that PSG also got a goal from an own goal from Miami. So Miami's goalie made several saves. Miami goalie by the name of Oscar Ustari, who's Argentine as well, 38 years old. I don't know too much about this about this goalie from Miami. He's been with Miami since last year. He's actually got about 10 appearances for Miami, which is surprising. Well, played his ball. I don't think he played in Europe. He's played in Mexico. He's played in Uruguay. Well, played for Pachuca. He actually played in Chile. Played for a club by the name of Audax Italiano, which is actually based in Chile. Started his career with a club known as Independiente, which is in Argentina. He's played for Boca Juniors as well. He did actually play for Europe. He played for Getafe. So yes, he did. Ustari actually did play in Europe. He played for several years from 2007 to 2012. Played for a Spanish club called Getafe and had over 40 appearances. But in Ustari's case, well, for him to, even though this was a crushing loss for his club, I mean, for him to basically have the accomplishment of making several saves against the current Champions League winners, especially a powerhouse like PSG, well, that is certainly one thing for him to be proud of. So in Inter Miami's case, they were crushed 4-0, but it could honestly have been a whole lot worse, and in their case, it didn't happen. But in this case, you have to ask yourself, did Miami just play better, or did PSG just not be able to score? Did PSG actually show a little bit of mercy? I mean, I don't know. I watched the entire game, and I really feel like PSG could have and should have done more damage, and they just obviously didn't. So that wraps up PSG. Well, should probably get this one out of the way. Palmeiras versus Botafogo was a very interesting match. A Brazilian clash in the round of 16. Palmeiras got the job done, scoring in extra time. And this game took place in Philadelphia, in the city of brotherly love. And, well, seeing Palmeiras actually win, well, I actually thought that Botafogo would actually get the job done. Botafogo actually beat Paris Saint-Germain in the group stage. So I thought that Botafogo certainly had a great chance of winning, but they didn't. So Palmeiras got it done. And again, it was an entertaining game, although I really don't have anything to say about it. Benfica got crushed by Chelsea 4-1. Well, Chelsea really honestly had a great game. And you know, it's interesting in this game that Chelsea went on a scoring spree in extra time. Because at the end of regulation, it was tied at 1. And it was amazing that in the 5th minute of stoppage time, Benfica equalized on a penalty that was converted by Angel Di Maria. So the advantage was certainly not in Chelsea's case at that point. I mean, this was very, very difficult for Chelsea to cough up a penalty basically in the closing seconds of the game. But, well, Chelsea certainly responded with it in extra time by scoring 3 goals. Christopher Nkunku made it 2-1 in the 108th minute. And a few minutes later, Pedro Neto made it 2-1. And then in the 117th minute, a player by the name of Kiernan Dewsbury Hall made it 4-1. So actually, Pedro Neto made it 3-1. So that was my mistake. And Nkunku made it 2-1. So, but interestingly enough, 12 shots on target by Chelsea. 12 of them. And they made 4 of them count. That's incredible. So that's for Benfica. I mean, they lost, suffering a bad loss like this. I mean, for Chelsea to have 12 shots on target and make only 4 of them count. Now, that right there, it cannot be overlooked. It just cannot be overlooked at all. But I can sit here and say that Chelsea failed to capitalize on numerous scoring opportunities, but they got the job done. They got the win, and they're in the quarterfinals. Bayern Munich eliminated Flamengo, so several Brazilian clubs were actually eliminated in this one. In the round of 16, interestingly enough, 2 Brazilian clubs advance, and 2 of them go home. I believe that for Flamengo losing to Bayern Munich, well, Flamengo certainly kind of put up a bit of a fight. So, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, the game could have gone either way. And for Flamengo, they really honestly did do their best to try to come back in this one. And of course, Flamengo is actually a club based in Rio de Janeiro. I hope I said that correctly. And based on what I saw, believe it or not, it was unfortunate because, Bayern Munich took the lead in the 6th minute, courtesy of an own goal. And Harry Kane made it 2-0 3 minutes later, and Harry Kane scored a brace in this one, so Harry Kane made it 2-0, and then Flamengo gets on the board and makes it 2-1. But in the 41st minute, Bayern Munich makes it 3-1. And then in the 55th minute, it's 3-2 by Jorginho. I'm curious. I'm curious to see the player Jorginho. Is that the Jorginho that? Yep, that's Jorginho that formerly played for Chelsea. The 33-year-old midfielder who formerly played for Chelsea, who's been with Flamengo since this year. I think just recently arrived. He was recently with Arsenal. So I actually was not aware that Jorginho had actually signed with Flamengo. So he actually departed the club in May. On May 27th, he announced his departure following 2 seasons with the club. And believe it or not, no, I did not see that. I was actually not aware of it. I'm sure that it was out there. I just thought either I didn't pay attention or I just simply didn't see it. And it was actually about a month ago that Jorginho signed with Flamengo on a contract through July 2028. So this was right before the FIFA Club World Cup. So he scored his first goal for Flamengo off of a penalty against Bayern Munich. So Jorginho scored his first goal for Flamengo in a FIFA Club World Cup round of 16 match against a European heavyweight. So this was definitely a great way for Jorginho to score his first goal for Flamengo. But unfortunately, well, Harry Kane in the 73rd minute made it 4-2, and at that point that was it. So when Flamengo cut Bayern Munich's 3-1 lead to 3-2, I said to myself, because this game was actually streaming while I was at work, and I said, if Flamengo can actually equalize, make it 3-3, and if this game goes into extra time, well, that will certainly be something really, really exciting. I mean, we already saw a Brazilian club knock out a European heavyweight, which we'll get to, but well, there's actually 2 of them. I mean, even and not to mention, there's another one, a huge shocking elimination that we're going to talk about. But if Flamengo had honestly just been a little bit more fortunate, things probably would have turned out to be different. But the Bayern Munich, honestly, they just proved to be too strong. And you see this Bayern Munich team. I mean, Harry Kane, Kingsley Coman, Gnabry, Mikel Olise, Goretzka, Kimmich, excuse me. Man, it's just seeing that defense right there, Manuel Neuer. I'm amazed. I'm amazed of shit like that. I know. Interestingly enough, 4 shots on target for Bayern Munich. 4, but keep in mind one of their 4 goals was an own goal by Flamengo. But still, making 3 of them count. That's incredible. So Bayern Munich meant business in this one. And who Bayern Munich plays next in the quarterfinals? Well, we'll get to that. Well, Inter Milan has certainly just been, ever since they've just suffered that loss in the Champions League final, losing 5-0, things have just not gone well for Inter Milan. As a matter of fact, I'm actually curious to go back to see how Inter Milan did in the group stage. Well, Inter Milan actually won their group with 2 wins and a draw. But it's unfortunate that they go from that and then they just suffer the quick humiliation loss to Fluminense in the round of 16. Man. So like I said, 2 Brazilian clubs advanced and 2 of them have gone home. And for Fluminense to win 2-0, scoring the first goal within 3 minutes and then scored the game-sealing goal in the 3rd minute of stoppage time in the second half. Inter Milan had 0 responses whatsoever. Inter Milan I don't know what's going on. And what's interesting is for Fluminense, the captain of the team, 40-year-old Thiago Silva, one of the greatest defenders of his generation. Thiago Silva, at 40 years old, captained Fluminense to a huge upset win over Inter Milan. That right there is something that we will never forget. And at 40 years old, Thiago Silva is still going strong. Much like Luka Modric and Cristiano Ronaldo, in Thiago Silva's case, age is just simply a number. And Thiago Silva is still going strong, and quite frankly, I'm happy for him. Thiago Silva, I've watched him play in Paris Saint-Germain for so many years. I watched him succeed at Chelsea. Thiago Silva is only continuing to keep the momentum alive. And seeing this Inter Milan team just look so strong, but be humiliated like this, especially how Fluminense countered Inter Milan's formation of 3 defenders, 5 midfielders, and 2 strikers. Fluminense countered with 3 defenders, 4 midfielders, one forward, and 2 strikers. So basically, Fluminense had to find a way to counter the 5 midfielder set that Inter Milan deployed against them. And seeing all these very talented names, Marcus Thuram, Lautaro Martinez, Dumfries, Barella, Di Marco, Bastoni, all these names, Sommer, all these very talented names for Inter Milan to be destroyed like this, to lose 2-0. Technically not destroyed, but still. To lose 2-0 like this is humiliating for Inter Milan. So right now, I don't know where Inter Milan goes from here. I mean, Inter Milan gets crushed in the Champions League final. They make it through the group stage. They win their group in the Club World Cup, and then they suffer an upset loss in the round of 16 to Fluminense. Inter Milan was obviously the heavy favorite, but I'm telling you, when you see these European teams be challenged by South American teams, you know, honestly, in my case, it's a story. It's definitely a story. It's some great content for this show, but honestly, seeing these well-talented and strong and powerful European clubs be overwhelmed and humbled and embarrassed by the South American clubs, man, it's telling me that maybe I ought to pay more attention to South American football as well. Not that I doubted that South American football was strong. I always knew that they were strong. I've always said South American football and European football, both are strong, but the playing style, the competitiveness, the environment, it's different. It's all different. So, football played all over the world, it's all different. Styles of play, again, formations, competitiveness, environments, styles of play, everything. It's all different. It's what makes the sport even more unique. But Fluminense, the 2-0 win over Inter Milan is huge. And I mean huge. Speaking of huge, Al-Hilal 4-3 over Manchester City. Manchester City is out. Now, first thing I said to my good friends, Mr. Steve Adams and Mr. David Scappin, I simply said in our group text, Erling Haaland, stay humbled, eh? That has been stuck in my mind ever since that draw against Arsenal when Erling Haaland confronted Arteta and said, stay humbled, eh? Man, that has just been stuck in my mind. And check this out, right off the bat, 15 shots on target for Manchester City, only 3 goals out of it. 12 saves? Sometimes just because, you know, like that, it doesn't always mean that the opposing goalie made a save, but let's be honest, the Al-Hilal goalie made saves. And the Al-Hilal goalie, played by the name of Yassine Bono from Morocco, 34 years old. And I don't even know much about this guy. You know, played for Atletico Madrid for several years, although he never ever made an appearance. He was with Atletico Madrid from 2012 to 2016, but never actually made an appearance. He did play in Italy. He did play for Girona for several years before he briefly played for Sevilla. He played several years in Sevilla before he left for Al-Hilal. So he did actually have some success with Sevilla. And so far with Al-Hilal, he did win the Saudi Pro League for the 2023-24 season. He won the King's Cup last year, and he's a 2-time winner of the Saudi Super Cup. And for Sevilla, he did win the Europa League twice and was the UEFA Super Cup runner-up twice in 2020 and 2023. Although with Atletico Madrid, he did win the La Liga in 2014 as well as the Supercopa de España in 2014, so I guess he was just a reserve goalie. But in his case, for him to come off that huge performance against Manchester City, making all those saves, again, it's just absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. And despite the fact that Manchester City just would not go away, I mean, Manchester City, look at it from here. Manchester City took the lead in the 9th minute, courtesy of Bernardo Silva. And within about a minute of the second half, Al-Hilal equalized. And Al Hilal briefly had the lead in the second half. Briefly had a 2-1 lead before Erling Haaland equalized about 3 minutes later. So, and just seeing how this went up, the fact that Al Hilal, I think, actually went. Well, they went up against. They went up in the score early in extra time when Khalido Koulibaly scored in the 94th minute, and 10 minutes later Phil Foden equalized, and then it was 3-3, and then Marcos Leonardo, who scored in the 46th minute, scored again in the 112th minute, which gave Al Hilal a 4-3 lead. And at that point, I expected Manchester City to equalize around the closing minutes of extra time, but Al Hilal held on, and that was it. So seeing everything that we saw again, so I'm gonna go back and take a look specifically at the stats, because this game is so huge, and this one I'm gonna make an exception. I'm gonna look at the stats on Goal.com. I've actually not done that for the FIFA Club World Cup, but I feel like this time I honestly kind of have no choice. Yeah, 12 saves. 12 saves. I don't even know what to say about that. I really, honestly, do not know what to say about that. 12 saves by Yassine Bono. And this has got to be one of the greatest moments of not only his career, but one of the greatest moments of his life. To make 12 saves. 12 saves against Manchester City. That's something that is earned. That is earned. That is very, very difficult to do. But Yassine Bono did it. And congratulations to Al Hilal. What a game. What a game. And not to mention that in their opening game, Al Hilal held Real Madrid to a draw. I believe it was actually Yassine Bono that actually denied Federico Valverde the game-winning goal in that game against Real Madrid, if I'm correct. So this has really been a great tournament so far for Al Hilal. To start off with that 1-1 draw against Real Madrid, and not to mention that Real Madrid scored first and Al Hilal equalized on a penalty in the 41st minute. And yes, Bono was the starting goalie then, and he's the one that actually denied Federico Valverde the game-winning goal off that penalty. So Al Hilal has been strong, absolutely strong. And as far as Manchester City goes, based on how things have gone, especially when they got that win over Juventus in the group stage, I thought that Manchester City were actually on their way of possibly actually challenging well for the Club World Cup. Manchester City came in this tournament as the defending Club World Cup champions. And Manchester City, I think, if I'm correct, they actually had failed to win any titles this year. Didn't win the Champions League, didn't win the FA Cup, didn't win the FL Cup, didn't win the Premier League. Well, they did win the FA Community Shield. So, does that count? And it's something. So, as far as those bigger major titles, Manchester City didn't win anything, but they did get the FA Community Shield when that win in that game against Manchester United almost a year ago. But this season, I mean, it's just been an absolute failure for Manchester City, and Manchester City is looking to redeem themselves this coming season. And I've certainly got my eyes on Manchester City, and Manchester City, I guess the first order of business is to reclaim some dominance in the Premier League, and to honestly make an impact in the Champions League itself. We'll see, but Manchester City right now has a lot that they got to work on, and they got a lot to prove, and they really are on a mission to redeem themselves and avenge themselves and to rectify the situations. And in other words, they want to right the wrongs. So we'll see. All right, so now we're done with Manchester City. Well, now we get to Real Madrid and Juventus. Surprisingly, I have really honestly nothing to say about it other than the fact that Real Madrid versus Juventus was an absolutely boring game. Absolutely boring game. I was watching the game right before I went to work, and Real Madrid was just not playing their best ball. I mean, one of the big talking points from this one is that Kylian Mbappe actually, I think, finally made his first appearance for Real Madrid in the FIFA Club World Cup. As we know, he started the tournament. He was in the hospital for an illness, and he had returned to training. He did not take part in the final group game, I think. And I was actually not surprised that he was not in the starting lineup against Juventus, but I was happy to see that he was on the bench. And I said, well, there's definitely a high chance that we're going to see him play, and he did play. He did come in and play, and unfortunately was a little bit MIA, was a little bit missing in action in this one. Mbappe, just coming off, on the bench, just recently dealing with an illness, so I really didn't expect Mbappe to have a significant impact, but I'm sure that he could have. But in this one, much like Paris Saint-Germain, I mean, in this game, this is a case of missed opportunities for Real Madrid because they had 11 shots on target. 11 shots on target and only made one of them count. So that's 10 chances missed. So Real Madrid is not at full strength. To be honest, right now, Real Madrid is not that good. They are not that good. Okay, I mean, again, they didn't beat Al-Hilal, but they did win their group, and they did beat Juventus. I mean, obviously they played well enough to win, but still, Real Madrid is just not that good. I mean, because Juventus wasn't really able to provide much of a threat. Randal Kolo Muani had a moment that was similar to that very infamous moment in the World Cup final a couple of years ago, where if he had just scored that goal, if Randal Kolo Muani had just scored that goal, France would have been world champions again. Unfortunately, Randal Kolo Muani had a similar moment in this one. And honestly, my heart aches for Randal Kolo Muani. Randal Kolo Muani, I have a lot of respect for. I'm cheering for him, and I'm praying. And I'm praying that one day his moment of redemption comes from that World Cup moment, where he scores a game-winning goal that makes France the world champions again. I hope that happens. I want Randal Kolo Muani to have that moment of redemption, and I am praying for it. I am praying for it. But Randal Kolo Muani just, man, if he had made that goal, Juventus probably would have, still probably emerged stronger because, again, Real Madrid looked good, but as far as the attack goes, they could not actually score these goals. And looking from these statistics, the Juventus goalie Di Gregorio certainly had a wonderful game of his own, and I want to definitely take a look at the statistics from this one. But basically, from everything that we've seen, I mean, Real Madrid was a bit humbled, but not fully humbled because they got the win. I mean, even Jude Bellingham, I think, was actually denied at one point as well. Look, if I'm here, 10 saves made by Di Gregorio. 10 saves made by the Juventus goalie, Di Gregorio. And 2 saves made by Thibaut Courtois. So both goalies, had their moments, but Di Gregorio kind of stole the show as far as saves go. Garcia and Vinny Jr. were in the front too for Real Madrid, and Kylian Mbappe came in and replaced Garcia. Real Madrid utilizing a similar tactical formation like Inter Milan, going with 5 midfielders. I was actually very surprised to see Trent Alexander-Arnold be deployed as a midfielder. And Aurélien Tchouameni was actually put as a defender, as the center defender. So you had Rudiger on one side and then Huijsen on the other side. And then in the midfield, you had Alexander-Arnold, Bellingham, Valverde, Güler, and Fran Garcia. And speaking of Trent Alexander-Arnold, he actually finally had his first huge moment for Real Madrid, as Trent Alexander-Arnold actually provided the assist in the goal. So Trent Alexander-Arnold was buried with criticism for his performance in the opening game against Al-Hilal, which was his debut for Real Madrid. So, I mean, I knew that Trent Alexander-Arnold, he wasn't going to be super impactful right off the bat. It's going to take a little bit of time. But Real Madrid, despite the fact that they didn't look that good, all these 10 scoring opportunities that were not converted. I mean, Di Gregorio for Juventus made 10 saves. So Di Gregorio had a huge moment, but it's unfortunate that Juventus couldn't get the win. So Randal Kolo Muani was deployed as the sole number 9 striker for Juventus, and behind him you had Yildiz and Conceição, and then in the midfield you had Cambiaso, Thuram, Locatelli, and Costa, and in the backfield you had Kalulu, Rugani and Kelly, and then Di Gregorio in the goalie position. Weston McKennie came off the bench for Juventus. Tim Weah was not used in this one. And again, and several other players. I mean, Danny Carvajal and Inter Militao were actually on the bench, and so was Rodrigo, and neither of those guys came in. Luca Vasquez didn't come in as well. So this game really had a lot of things yet to wonder about. I mean, Luka Modric was on the bench, but he came in. And when Luka Modric right now, of course, is on his way out of Real Madrid. From what I understand, everything's been agreed upon for his move to AC Milan. He just has to, sign the contract, put pen to paper, and that's it. So for Real Madrid, and especially for Luka Modric, if Luka Modric can actually help lead Real Madrid to winning the FIFA Club World Cup, it would be certainly the perfect way for him to exit the club. We'll have to wait and see. But I can't stress it enough that Real Madrid and Juventus, a game full of hype. But I think as far as hype goes and as far as it being a great game, it failed to meet expectations. But Real Madrid got the win. And even though I say Real Madrid did not look good, I mean, obviously they looked good enough to get the win. I mean, they were able to play solid on defense like that. But again, Juventus' offense was not able to, Juventus' attack was not able to really pull through. And there was that moment by Randal Colomwani where he had a similar moment again to that final where if he had been able to score, France would have won their third world title. It would have been an incredible comeback, but unfortunately it didn't happen. But again, I'm seriously hoping and praying that Randal Colomwani gets his moment of redemption. Colomwani himself has said that he lives with that every single day. And look, I'll be honest with you. I love Randal Colomwani. I'm rooting for him. I'm always praying for the man. Because again, I want him to have his moment of redemption, but I want him to be successful. Randal Colomwani is a good player. And when people make fun of him or go on a harsh tirade of criticism towards the guy, especially for missing that shot, I will go to the great ends of the world to defend Randal Colomwani, just like I will for Eduardo Camavinga. Eduardo Camavinga and Randal Colomwani, they're important to me, and I care deeply about them, and I always pray for them, and I always wish them nothing but the best. And I've vowed, I've told people, mark my words, Randal Colomwani will have his moment of redemption. It's going to happen. I don't know when, but mark my words, it is going to happen. I had to go on that rant because, again, I've been, much like Paul Pogba and Olivier Giroud and Eduardo Camavinga, I have been ridiculed for defending Randal Colomwani. I have defended Randal Colomwani. I've been bullied because of it. I've been ridiculed, but you know what? I don't care. I would not change a thing. I'm happy to defend those guys. It's what I do. All right. Well, now we get to Borussia Dortmund versus Monterrey. I should mention, Monday at work was not a good day. Work on Monday was so slow that I got sent home after only 2 hours. And I took advantage of the opportunity. I did a couple of episodes for this show because, normally because my work schedule is so brutal and so demanding that I only get to podcast once or twice a week. And Wednesdays, being one of my days off from work, is one of the only days I can do it. So I took advantage of the opportunity. So yesterday I was able to make it through work and I was able to do okay, which I'm grateful to God for. But at work I was actually able to watch Borussia Dortmund versus Monterrey. And actually one of the guys I work with is two of the dudes I work with are actually strong supporters of Monterrey. Well, as a matter of fact, they're actually all a family. They're all supporters of Monterrey. And one of them was specifically watching the game, like he couldn't take his eyes off of it. We had some business, but it was, you could still, spend a few minutes, looking at the television for a couple of minutes and get back to work. But Monterrey, honestly, I feel like Monterrey really, honestly, should have won this game. In the closing minutes of stoppage time in the second half, I think Sergio Ramos himself, on a free kick, came very, very close to scoring a game-tying goal, which would have been huge. So I'm sure a lot of people loved seeing Sergio Ramos come up short on a huge goal. And as we know, Sergio Ramos is, he's universally hated. I understand that, obviously. His behavior over the years, didn't really do him justice. But Sergio Ramos is, in fact, one of the best defenders of his generation. Obviously, he's very, very controversial, but that's besides the point. So Sergio Ramos at this point, still kind of going strong. He really has been. I mean, his time at PSG, his time in Paris Saint-Germain really didn't go too well. But at 39 years old, Sergio Ramos is still able to provide well in the game, and he's playing right now. He's playing in Monterrey, which is great. But and Sergio Ramos actually got the start in this one. But Monterrey, after 24 minutes, Monterrey was down 2-0, and within 3 minutes of the second half, Monterrey scored, and it was a beautiful goal scored by a player by the name of Germain Berterame. It was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. A beautiful goal. And because it was 3 minutes in the second half, I thought that Monterrey not only had more than enough time to equalize, but Monterrey honestly had enough time to actually get ahead. And believe it or not, Monterrey actually had more shots on target than Borussia Dortmund. Borussia Dortmund only had 3, and they made 2 of them count. And it was Serhou Guirassy that scored both goals for Borussia Dortmund. And Monterrey had 7 shots on target, and again, can only make 1 of them count. So in Monterrey's case, the inability to capitalize on scoring chances is what led to their downfall. And that's what I talked to some of the guys that I work with. They're Monterrey fans, and there was actually several customers that were there that were Monterrey fans. And I kind of gave them my thought, and they agreed with me that they say, yeah, we just could not score. And one of them I said to him, and one of them said to me that this game, how strong Monterrey was. I mean, he said that clubs in North America and South America are capable of challenging the Europeans. And I said, well, a club in Mexico and in Brazil and Argentina, definitely. But as far as I told him, as far as MLS teams, no, not a chance. No chance of challenging the Europeans, right? But anyway, he basically this Monterrey fan was insisting that even though Monterrey lost, we have to give Monterrey credit for challenging Borussia Dortmund, and I said, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no debate against that. There's no doubt about it. I mean, I watched the game. I saw how strong Monterrey was, and it's unfortunate that Monterrey just was unable to get the job done. But I said, yeah, teams in the Mexican league, in the Mexican league, certainly, obviously, what we saw is they challenged the European heavyweight, but unfortunately came up short. And I said to him, the sad part is, I mean, Monterrey, I think, should have won this game. They absolutely should have won this game, but they didn't. And it's unfortunate. It really is. So, and seeing, funny, Jude Bellingham's younger brother, actually, the 19-year-old Joe Bellingham, actually started in this one. So, this one, and I would say had a decent game. Got a yellow card and got substituted out. Kobel was at the goalie, and in the front two you had Adeyemi and Guirassy in the front two, and and Guirassy scored the 2 goals of this one. So I mean, this game was very, very hard fought, but I feel like Monterrey put up a greater show than Borussia Dortmund, even though Borussia Dortmund is the team that got the win. But it's unfortunate, Monterrey gave it their absolute best, but their absolute best was just simply not enough, and it's very, very unfortunate, but, it is what it is. I spoke to the Monterrey fans, especially ones that I work with, and they said, well, we had our chances, and they didn't get the job done, so. But it's very, very difficult, but at the same time, I still feel like Monterrey, in their case, this was a losing effort. A losing effort, because they gave it their absolute best, but it just wasn't enough. And unfortunately, Monterrey is now out of the tournament. So that wraps up the round of 16. So now I want to do a quick preview of the quarterfinals. Palmeiras versus Chelsea. I feel like this game could go either way. Part of me believes that Chelsea should not be the favorite in this one, that Palmeiras should. This game's also going to take place in Philadelphia. Palmeiras certainly has a chance. I think Chelsea's going to win, but part of me believes that Chelsea, again, should not be the favorite. I mean, I think this game is 50-50. This game could come down to, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if this game went down to penalties. But I think Chelsea right now is obviously the favorite to win, but part of me believes that that shouldn't be the case because Palmeiras is stronger than they look. But Palmeiras versus Chelsea, my pick is Chelsea. Fluminense versus Al-Hilal. Well, Fluminense pulled off the win over Inter Milan, and Al-Hilal pulled off the win over Manchester City. So if we want to talk about a game that's truly 50-50, a game that can truly go either way, it's Fluminense versus Al-Hilal. Again, Fluminense eliminated Inter Milan. Al-Hilal eliminated Manchester City. Both teams are coming into this game coming off an upset over a European heavyweight. Two teams that have been in the Champions League final recently within the last couple of years. Teams that have actually won some silverware in Europe. So you have a Brazilian club eliminate an Italian powerhouse and a Saudi club eliminate an English powerhouse. So once again, if we're talking about a team that is 50, well, if we're talking about a game where it's 50-50 and anything can happen, then without a doubt, it's Fluminense versus Al-Hilal. To be honest with you, I believe Fluminense is going to win this one, but if Al-Hilal pulled off the upset to go to the Final Four, well, that Cinderella team ride is only going to continue to happen for Al-Hilal. Definitely. I mean, basically from this format, if Al-Hilal makes it to the Final Four, then Al-Hilal is officially the Cinderella team in this tournament. To hold Real Madrid to a 1-1 draw, especially to deny them the game-winning shot on a penalty in very late in the game, and to eliminate Manchester City in the round of 16, and to make it to the semifinals, yeah, that is a Cinderella run. So if Al-Hilal gets past Fluminense, it's definitely a Cinderella run. But I guess the same thing could be said for Fluminense, but at the same time, Al-Hilal has gone through bigger obstacles. Now we get to Paris Saint-Germain versus Bayern Munich. Well, there's definitely some history between the two right there, and far more than the Champions League final 5 years ago. Paris Saint-Germain easily beat Inter Miami. Paris Saint-Germain destroyed Atletico Madrid in the group stage. But Paris Saint-Germain did suffer a loss to Botafogo. So I feel like this is another game that can go either way. But I think Fluminense and Al-Hilal kind of sticks out more considering the circumstances. I feel like all these games could go either way, because the other game is Real Madrid versus Borussia Dortmund, a rematch of the final last year. Right now, PSG looks poised to win the entire tournament. Right now, we could see PSG versus Real Madrid in the semifinals. We would love to see that in the final itself, but right now, it's very possible that we're going to see we could see a German derby in the semifinals. We could see Dortmund versus Bayern Munich. Hey, that would be cool. But what I would really love to see is Paris Saint-Germain versus Real Madrid. And honestly, right now, part of me believes that Paris Saint-Germain would obliterate this Real Madrid squad. So if it's PSG versus Real Madrid in the semifinals at East Rutherford, New Jersey, the same venue where the final will take place, we're going to be in for a treat. But then again, I thought we'd be in for a treat when it came to Real Madrid versus Juventus, but that certainly wasn't the case, because that game was boring. Yeah, Real Madrid versus Juventus was boring. Absolutely boring. So, PSG versus Bayern Munich. Well, I hope PSG does not make me regret this, but I think PSG gets this one. But Bayern Munich, Bayern Munich is tough as ever. They are tough as ever. What I'm trying to say is Bayern Munich, as always, they are tough. So again, PSG versus Bayern Munich, it could go either way. It's 50-50, but same thing for Real Madrid versus Borussia Dortmund. But I think Real Madrid gets that one as well. So I think we're going to see PSG versus Real Madrid in the Champions League Final Four. And I think we're going to see Chelsea versus Al-Hilal in the semifinals as well. So as far as I'm concerned, Chelsea could very well actually make it to the final. Chelsea could certainly make it to the final. And honestly, as far as I'm concerned, they actually could pull it off. But for now, we'll just have to wait and see. But my picks are Chelsea, Fluminense, Paris Saint-Germain, and Real Madrid. And as far as going back to Fluminense versus Al-Hilal, This is really embarrassing, but I don't even remember. Did I pick Al Hilal already to go? But, you know, if Al Hilal pulled it off, then I would take responsibility. But Fluminense is my pick. So, but Al Hilal had the big. Well, you know, sometimes you ask yourself, who had the bigger challenge in the round of 16? Was it Al Hilal or was it Fluminense? I mean, I would say probably Fluminense. I mean, both teams faced a major, massive obstacle, and they overcame it. So even though all these quarterfinal matches are 50-50, I mean, the one that stands out the most is obviously Fluminense versus Al Hilal. But I think Fluminense wins this one, and then Chelsea gets past Palmeiras. And then I have PSG going past Bayern Munich, and then I have Real Madrid going past Borussia Dortmund. You know what would be funny? Because this is possible. Could you imagine in the semifinals we have a Brazilian clash and a German clash? You have Palmeiras versus Fluminense in one game in the semifinals, and in the other one you have Borussia Dortmund versus Bayern Munich. I mean, imagine that. Imagine that. Although it would be humiliating for PSG and Real Madrid to be both eliminated. But I feel like one of the two is going to crap the bed. I think either Real Madrid or PSG, one of those two, will not make it to the Final Four. But I'm taking a risk right here. I think Real Madrid and PSG both advance to the Final Four, and that'll certainly be an entertaining game. And, you know, we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But once again, my picks in the quarterfinals are Chelsea, Fluminense, Paris Saint-Germain, and Real Madrid. As far as I'm concerned, anything could happen, and that's why I'm very, very excited for the quarterfinals. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, you can find Into the Net FC on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. So if you would please, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. That way, I know for sure that you're not going to miss out on any exciting upcoming content. Thank you very, very much. Y'all have a good one, and God bless.